Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Vincenzo Gulizzi. I'm a postdoc at CCSE. And today, I would like to talk about my ongoing work, which is about bringing higher-order numerical schemes to discuss exascale modeling. So, what I've been doing the last month here is basically motivated by the need of using or bringing higher order scheme to exascale modeling. So as you have seen in all of these presentations, basically everybody here is using low order schemes, which we can totally say that they are pretty powerful. They work really well. There has been a lot of investments in the last years on these methods, and this is why they are used by many people. But we all know that we have advantages from going from zero order scheme to a first order to a second order. So why not why not continuing with this increasing order approach, and we try to develop something that can work with any kind of order. So this is what I want to do, and I will show you some application in this presentation that are obtained by combining the discontinuous Galerkin method, which is a generally high order method, and the AMREX framework. So that I hope that everybody that here has been using AMREX will be able to use AMREX with higher order capabilities. And I will show you some application of what I am developing for elliptic PDEs and hyperbolic PDEs. So first of all, why do we need higher order methods, and what are the main differences between low order and high order methods? So high-order methods show a better accuracy than low-order method, kind of by definition. And the thing is that they offer better accuracy, and actually they offer HP accuracy for smooth problems. And this is the main point that I want to stress, because in many problems we have smooth regions, where we have smooth solutions, and so higher-order problem can be very beneficial. Also, another interesting and very important point about higher-order model is that they offer low dissipation. This means that we are able to track the features of a fluid dynamics flow or a problem that you want to solve with very sharp accuracy. And this is very important if you want to reduce or if you want to be very accurate after many simulation time steps. Of course, if you use, so another advantage of higher order method is the smaller mesh size, which it doesn't mean that you're using a smaller length of the mesh, but you're using a smaller data structure for the mesh size. So it basically means you can use a higher size of your mesh elements. Another interesting thing about higher order method is that since you can reduce the size of the length scale of the length of the mesh, you can basically do more local communication. And this is important for parallelization, because you basically reduce the time that processor spend for exchanging communications. So, and now after I've introduced what are the advantages of higher order method, the next question is why using discontinuous Galerkin method? And to answer this question, I want to cite a paper, which is reported here, where the authors basically have gathered information from the whole the CFD communities that have worked on CFD problems. And basically what they are saying that what we need to bring higher order method to the exascale modeling, or to make them really perform well as compared to lower order method, are these points shown here on the right. And basically what we need is a high order mesh generation, HP adaptation, scalable time integration, and robust accuracy preserving shock capturing techniques. And this is why discontinuous Galerkin methods are probably the best option with this respect. They are based on a discontinuous approximation of your unknown field. So they are numerical methods. So you basically have a domain, you discretize it into any shape. And this is very important, because since you have a discontinuous representation of your solution, you can basically use any kind of shape elements. Then since you have a discontinuous representation of your solution, you can also use a different order of representation for each element. This means that discontinuous Galerkin methods are very good for HP adaptation. So you can have regions where you have a low order scheme and regions where you have a high order scheme. And this is very important, for example, for shock capturing techniques, because when you are dealing with shocks in a domain, you basically have regions where you cannot reach high order accuracy because you have a shock. So the accuracy there is at most first order. And with discontinuous Galerkin method, you can basically decide that this region, you can approximate that region with a low order scheme. Of course, another advantage of using a discontinuous approach is the fact that you have a block diagonal mass matrix, so each element is totally independent on the neighboring elements in terms of the mass matrix, of course. And this means that these methods are amenable to massive parallelization. So, how do I want to bring discontinuous Galerkin methods to the exascale? So in order to do so, I'm using the software AMREX that has been developed here by the old CCC group and other people from outside the lab. And basically, what I'm doing right now, I'm using all the routines and methods that are implemented inside AMREX and modifying them to enable higher order computational schemes. Also, another thing that I've been implementing in the recent months is the possibility to use a sharp or a high order accurate representation of the boundaries, which is something that, of course, does not talk well with a block structured approach. I know that AMREX has embedded boundaries, but there are still problems or improvements or room for improvement, and I think that by using this approach, it is possible to combine or to improve that aspect. So now let me show you some examples of some application of this high order numerical scheme for partial differential equations. So the first type of equations that I would like to talk about is elliptic partial differential equations. So, and this is the type of equation that I have been dealing with. This is something that is related to my previous work, but it still belongs to the same framework that I am developing here. And as you can say, I'm solving a general, a type of or elliptic partial differential equation that can be specified to different kinds of equations that have application in many different fields. And you can have here, you can see here examples of how, by changing the coefficients of this equation, you can obtain different types of elliptic partial differential equations. So I'm just keeping all the details on how to obtain this formulation because they are boring, and I will lose your attention very soon. I just want to show you the weak statement in terms of the discontinuous Galerkin formulation. And as you can see, you have volume terms of you have basically you write a weak statement where you have terms that depend on a volume integration, which means that since the numerical method, the discontinuous Galerkin method, introduces a discontinuous function, this part, the volume part, can be done in a massive parallel way. Because I hope that is clear. Because each element is independent of each other, so this computation can be parallelized very well. On the other hand, of course, you have to make the elements talk among each other. And to do so, you have to introduce these terms here on the bottom that basically make the element talk with each other. And how to do so? So basically, in order to make this element communicate, one needs to introduce these terms here, the terms with the hat, with a small hat, this one here and this one here, which basically allow to express the solution at the boundary between elements by a combination of the solution inside the neighboring elements. And this is how, in discontinuous Galerkin method, you treat you treat not only the element interface, but also the boundary conditions. Oh, and I also want to point out that these numerical fluxes are not trivial. This term that enters the boundary interest is not trivial because they affect a lot the solution. I will show you an example in the next slide. So this is an application that I've dealt with in my previous work, and is basically based on the solution of partial differential equations that are applied to structures. So basically, if you have in this particular case, you have a plate-like structure, so like layered structures, and you introduce certain approximation on the solution throughout the thickness. And in this way, your governing equation change because you have introduced this kind of equation, and you end up with elliptic partial differential equations that are of the same form that the one that I showed you before. And these are some results that I obtained. And I wanted to show you 3 main points. So first of all, I show you that in the numerical solution of the elliptic partial differential equation with the discontinuous Galerkin method, you have to introduce the fluxes, which makes the elements talk among each other. And if you don't introduce the fluxes in a correct way, you basically end up with a very, how can I say, if you compute the error of your solution within your domain, this error is affected very much by the choice of the numerical fluxes. And for example, if you use the pure penalty approach, which is simpler in terms of numerical fluxes, you end up with a strong dependence of your solution by the penalty parameter. Of course, whereas on the other hand, if you use the correct way the numerical fluxes, you obtain a solution that is almost independent by also changing the degree, the order of the solution. So basically, what I'm saying is valid for order that go from 2 to the 8th order. And also with the correct choice of the numerical fluxes, you obtain optimal accuracy. Okay, so and as I told you before, this method was implemented with the implicit mesh technique, and these are here on the right. You see some results compared to the finite element approach, which is one of the techniques that has been used in the solid mechanics community for solving elliptic equations, basically, that comes from solid mechanics. Oh, and this is another application that I have worked on. And besides like all the results, I want to point out in this particular application one advantage of this continuous Galerkin method, which is the possibility of introducing a specific feature in your solution, because since each element is independent of each other, you can basically introduce, in this case, a discontinuity in your solution by suitably modifying the basis functions. And this is still valid in the whole framework. So the other application that I have worked on is the solution of hyperbolic equations, which find application in fluid dynamics and in gas dynamics, for example. And this equation is the kind of equation that I've been working on. And once again, these are examples that I have investigated by just changing the shape of the explicit expression of the terms that enters this equation. This is, once again, the corresponding weak solution where you have domain integrals and also boundary integrals, which are or involve in the numerical flux. And these are some results that I obtained. So here on the right, you see the solution of the linear advection equation. And you can notice the effect of using of the same grid. This is a 32 by 32 grid, different order of approximation. So basically, if you use a low order method, you have a very strong diffusion. And if if you need to track in a sharp way this kind of wave, you need a much, much finer grid. Whereas with a higher order method, for example, here with p equals 3, you are able to obtain a very sharp representation of your solution. Once again, during my work, I've tested that with the correct choice of the numerical fluxes, you obtain optimal convergence. And this is also valid by changing the basis functions. And these are applications for gas dynamics. So basically, I've used the same equations, and I have solved the gas dynamics equation. And like from the results that I obtained, I think I noticed like I can like stress 2 points. So first of all, we in fact reduce the order of accuracy if we have a shock. So discontinuous Galerkin methods or higher order methods necessarily they suffer from the presence of shocks. So we needed to introduce the so-called slope limiters. And this is something that I didn't particularly like because you basically lose what's good for higher order method. So I think that, well, I have to say that with the higher order method, you get a better or sharper representation of your solution. But in my opinion, this improvement is not too big. What I think it can be done in this way is to use the HP feature of discontinuous Galerkin method. I will get to that later. So what I'm doing right now, as I said, I had implemented the implicit mesh with a 2D scheme, and now I'm implementing it into Amrex, so to have it ready for everybody of you that can need it. And so basically, what I'm facing right now are the following points. So first of all, I'm trying to understand which is the best data structure to store this information. Because if you have a square, which of course can be rescaled to a rectangle, or we can be scaled to different shapes, to different lengths of the sizes. This is not true for general shaped element, and this means that we have to collect or store some way all the quadrature information for each element. And this is one issue that I'm trying to optimize. Also, another problem is how to make processor talk with each other when you have elements that extend. Because in Robert Say's technique, in order to avoid small cells, you make element extend to the small cells. But how do we deal with that if the small element belongs to a different processor of the element that is extending to? And then also we have the problem of visualization, which probably just this morning I realized I don't need. It's not a problem anymore. Yes. So to conclude, my work is aimed at bringing bringing high order capability to exascale computing, and I'm doing this by combining discontinuous Galerkin method and Amrex, the Amrex tools. I'm also introducing the possibility to capture or to resolve with high order accuracy the boundary with the implicit defined mesh technique and not all the implementation that comes with it. And the future work, I will be focusing on wave propagation and also AMR application for shocks, for simulation that involve shocks. And I think this is probably the best way to deal with shocks. So use the AMR capability of Amrex and introduce low order scheme where the shock near the shocks and higher order scheme far from the shocks. So I would like to thank Wei Chan and Andrew that have been so kind to me. I've asked them many questions about low-level feature of Amrex. I also have to thank Robert Say for all his help with the integration of the implicit defined mesh technique, and of course the whole CCSE group that I have been sharing with them many thoughts and many questions. And thank you all for being here.
Do you think HP is a bigger win in fluid mechanics or solids? Do you have a thought on that?
I think it's really good for fluid mechanics if you have to have advector field. If you have advection feature in your differential equations, it's really working well because it works like a finite volume scheme. However, in solid mechanics, you have to ensure the continuity of your solution. So basically, solid mechanics is related to elliptic equations, and basically the solution is continuous. But if there are regions where you know that there is a discontinuity, for example, if you have a crack, or if you have any kind of discontinuity, basically DG can really help in, it really needs, it allows you to not having basically the continuity of the nodes. With finite elements, you have, finite elements are constructed on the continuity of the nodes of your mesh. With DG, you don't need that anymore. So you can have hanging nodes or general shaped elements, and this is a really big win for even in the solid mechanics world.
So I have a question. So when it's a finite element, so when it's continuous from what I remember, you can use a shape function to represent like the regions like in between the nodes and what you're trying to solve for. Roughly taken. With the discontinuous Galerkin method, you can use a different shape function.
Yes.
Depending if you're more interested in a specific region where it's hard to.
Yes. So
with a higher order.
this is probably the best example. So here you have a crack, and you know that the crack develops a singularity in your solution. It's not a too bad. It's not like a. It's not a too bad singularity, but it's still a singularity that can be integrable. And with DG, you can embed your singularity inside the basis functions, and the DG formulation still works. Whereas with finite elements, it's not that easy. It's more involved. With DG, you basically extend your basis, the set of your basis function. It still works. And it's totally the same way.
What's the highest order that people realistically know?
I've seen like even to the 12th order, but I don't know if by reading that paper that I showed at the beginning, it is not really known where which is the best order in terms of interpolation. So it's really a trade-off, because if you go higher order, each element carries a lot of information because it's super big. And this is probably not, it's not true that going to, you not go 100 order and.
But wait, is there a sweet spot, like fourth order?
It's not yet, yes. At least according to what the people from the CFD community were saying, yeah. I think it's just a matter of optimization. So high order methods still need to be optimized, because the community that work on low order method is much bigger, I would say.
Okay.
Thank you.